He's NBC News' intelligence and national security reporter. Joining us from Washington, Virginia Heffernan is here as well. She's New York Times Magazine contributing writer, Politico contributing editor, and the host of Slate's Trumpcast. And Ken, let me start with you and the tweet that we saw from the president just a little while ago. A lot of speculation swirling here that this could narrow the focus here on an obstruction of justice allegation. The president tweeting this morning, "I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He has pled guilty to those lies. It's a shame because his actions during the transition were lawful. There was nothing to hide." We heard just a few moments ago this was tweeted off while he was in New York here for a fundraising trip. Ken, what do you make of the tweet from the president?
It's a remarkable tweet, David, because if Donald Trump knew that Mike Flynn lied to the FBI, it really seems to open him wide open to a charge of obstruction of justice, because a few weeks later, he had a private meeting with the FBI director, James Comey, where he asked Comey to see his way to letting the Flynn matter go. And when Comey testified to Congress, he said he took that as an order, as a directive from the president, which he did not obey. And then, of course, subsequently, Trump fired Comey. And this goes to the heart of the obstruction of justice question that Robert Mueller is investigating regarding Donald Trump and the people around him. I have a feeling that we're going to see the story change on this tweet as the day or days move forward. But for right now, it's just a forehead slapper, David.
Virginia Heffernan, let me ask you about the specter of Jared Kushner in all of this. We're dealing with adjectival modifiers here. Senior and very senior members of this transition team. NBC News reporting that the very senior could be, in fact, Jared Kushner.
Yeah.
What do you make of what do we know about the role that he's played in all of this thus far?
Well, Jared, sometimes we think that Donald Trump and Jared Kushner are always acting in lockstep, but there are some moments in the transition where we saw that Jared may be out for Jared, and in a bigger way, maybe out for the Kushners. So one of the things that the police showed us he negotiated, or he pressured Flynn to negotiate, was a deal with the Russians to vote against this UN resolution condemning settlements in Israel. We know that he has a connection to Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. This is Jared Kushner. And we know that Israel is of supreme interest to him more than it is to the president. That's one of his interests. Another one is he has a huge debt on his building at 666 Fifth Avenue. Interest rates are about to jump on that. He has negotiated with the Chinese and with other foreign investors to try to bail that thing out. So that's another thing on his mind. A third thing that was on his mind at the time was Chris Christie, who had prosecuted his own father and landed Jared Kushner's father, Charlie, in jail, and he was an ally to Trump. So there's evidence that Jared is going to be looking out for himself, and that when everything comes down on this, Abbe Lowell, his lawyer, and Ty Cobb may not be acting in lockstep.
And a big payment on that tower coming due, I think, on the 15th of December. Ken Delaney,
Yes.
let me ask you here about this issue over Israeli settlements. This was something that had been reported. It was something of keen interest to Michael Flynn. It was something of keen interest to Jared Kushner as well. Given that, what was reported and what we knew about all this, what new did we learn yesterday about what they were doing?
Oh, well, we learned that there was a secret effort by the Trump group to reach out to the Russians before they took office to essentially undermine Obama foreign policy. And you know, there's this 1799 law called the Logan Act, which seems to prohibit that. It's never been enforced. It's not clear whether it's enforceable. But there's certainly an American tradition that we have one president at a time in this country. And what we learned from this indictment is it wasn't just Mike Flynn doing this on his own, reaching out to Sergei Kislyak. He was doing it at the direction of Jared Kushner, and that's really significant. You know, Jared Kushner was interviewed by Robert Mueller just last month, we've reported. We know very little about what he was asked, but if he didn't tell the truth about his interactions, that's going to be a very big problem for him.
And Virginia, chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that the president in this tweet, which seems to all to be ill-advised, you know, if not implicating of him, his point that this is all about the lies, and later and otherwise he said there's no collusion, gets around. I'll put it this way: we've inherited from Watergate the idea that the problem is the cover-up, not the crime. Here, I think possibly the crime is the interesting thing. What Mike Flynn was lying about is the interesting thing. So, and just because it's not illegal or just because it's a violation of the never enforced Logan Act doesn't mean that it's not scandalous. So we all remember that Bill Clinton lied about having sex with Monica Lewinsky. Extramarital sex, workplace consensual sex is not actually illegal. So but perjury is illegal. So we have Flynn doing something scandalous that may or may not be illegal, may or may not fall afoul of the Logan Act, doesn't maybe collusion itself doesn't meet the requirements for being some kind of high crime. On the other hand, it is shocking that this happened. It's in violation of the reason the Logan Act's not enforced is nobody could ever imagine someone would violate this. I mean, 1799, what was it? Talking to the
French,
British, talking to the French
Yeah.
about undermining American foreign policy. It just never happens before. So I think the shock of what we've learned from the plea happened at Mar-a-Lago should not be understated. And that shock should have the effect, I think, of getting people to really gun for Mueller on this and say, this is not a nothing burger.
Ken Delaney, really quickly here, I mentioned that Donald Trump Jr. is going to be appearing before lawmakers here in the coming days. What are they going to be interested in hearing from the son of the president, who, like his father, is very active on Twitter as well?
Well, of course, they're going to ask him about that infamous June 2016 Trump Tower meeting where he met with Russians who were on the promise of incriminating information about Hillary Clinton. They're also going to ask him about a lesser known, but I think very important, May 2016 encounter with a Russian named Alexander Torshin. This was at a dinner on the sidelines of a National Rifle Association conference. Torshin is a guy Spanish prosecutors have accused of having mob ties. He denies this, but he's very close to Putin. He was trying to get a meeting with the campaign. Jared Kushner apparently said, let's not meet with this guy, but somehow Donald Trump Jr. ended up at a dinner with him, and I know that congressional investigators want to ask how that happened and what was said, David.
All right, thanks to both of you. Appreciate it. That's Ken Delaney and Virginia Heffernan joining me here in New York.